Hello viewers, welcome to UN Autonomous College. Today we are going to discuss about a new concept that is known as file accessing permission, and we can say that it's known as access modes in our Unix system. We know that in a previous section we already discussed what are the part 1 of this file permission and access mode. In that section we are learning what are the different ways to add some permissions to our Unix file systems and what are the different restrictions also available in our Unix file systems. We are learning about this concept in that Unix part. So today we are going to discuss about the part 2. In that part 2 we are learning different parts of file permission and access modes in our Unix system. Now focus on that slide. So in this slide we are learning what are the different outlines related to our topic. Here we are learning what are the different process through which you can changing the file or directory permissions with chmod commands. Then we are learning what are the different changing owners and group section. After that we are learning what are the different changing ownership patterns, then changing group ownership, then SUID and SGID file permission. First we are learning here changing file or directory permissions with chmod commands. So in this section we are learning, say you don't want your colleague to see your personal images, so this can be achieved by changing the file permissions. If a user want to doing these sections in their Unix system, then we must to take the help of that is known as chmod command. Here we can use the chmod command which stands for change mode. Using the command we can set permissions like your read, write and execute on a file or directory for the owner or group and the world section, so that if a user want to adding any type of permissions, that may be read, write or execute permissions in this Unix system, and that Unix system contains number of files as well as you can say directories, in that moment we can take the help of three types of permissions. So here the most important thing, how to add a permission in our file system or directory system in Unix part. Here first of all you can write chmod is known as a command, and that command act as a Unix command. So here we can must put like chmod, then we can give a space, then we can write the permissions, then we can write here file name. Permissions means in this section of permissions we can write here you want to give your file with permission like read or write or execute mode. So the next slide we are learning here, there are two parts we are having. So there is a two ways of command like your absolute mode and symbolic mode. First of all, we are learning here what is the real use of that absolute mode in our Unix system. Here the absolute mode is always denotes here like the file permissions are not represented as characters but a 3-digit octal number, so that if a user want to put any type of 3-digit octal number act as a file permission in our Unix system. Similarly, here we have a table. In that table we have number of permissions which are included in this part. So here we have a table. In that table we have a number like 0. 0 means no permission. In the first section that like your number 1. Here that number 1 mean as a execute. Here that execute is one permission type. In that type of permission must be denoted in the way of symbolic notification like $X. If a user want to put no permissions in their file or directory management system, in that moment we never put any type of symbol, like only you can put 3 dash symbol, then it is known as a no permissions are added in our file or directory system. If a user want to put like -w dash, that is a part of a write permission. If a user want to put some write permission in their file or directory management system, in that moment user must like to put here -w and then dash symbol. If a user want to put here -wx as a symbol, in that moment we can say, we know that here that x is always denoted as a execute mode, and here like if a user want to put wx and the wx is known as a prefix adding like dash, in that moment we can say this file or directory is contains some permission type like execute as well as write permission. If a user want to add some permission like read, in that moment user must like put a symbol like r-. Whenever user can put r-, in moment it is known as a read mode, and that read mode is already adding in our file or directory system. Similarly, if a user want to put read with execute mode or execute permission type, in that moment user must put a symbol like r, then dash, then x. In that moment it is known as a read then execute mode. So it is a general mode through which you can be process it. Similarly, if a user want to put some read and write mode, in that moment we can put here R then W dash. Whenever a user can put R then W dash, in that moment it is known as a read then write mode. So if a user want to put like read, write and execute mode, in that moment user must to type here RWX. R stands for read mode, W stands for write mode, then X stands for execute mode. So in this way we can put three types of permissions in our Unix system. So it is a general way of explanation which is already described in this slide. So it is a general permission type table. So we have generally 7 or 8 types of permissions. One type known as a no permission, execute write, read, then read execute, then read write, then as well as we can say execute mode. So we have here 8 type of permissions. By using that 8 type of permissions, we can add in our file or directory management system, through which you can make it more protected in our Unix system. But here we can put and how to use this kind of symbols in our Unix system we already described in this image or in this section here. Suppose user want to display what are the different type of permissions added in our file. Suppose we have a file named as a sample. In that sample file we want to see what are the different type of permissions added in it. So we must to type a $prompt, because you know that whenever user want to put any type of Unix system or open that Unix system, we have a $sign, and the $sign is that act as a Unix prompt. In that Unix prompt we can give a space, then we can write a command like ls, then we can give a space, then we can adding here -l, then we can write a file name. We want to show what are the different permissions are added in that file name like sample. So in that moment we have written like -rw means here we are adding like read write mode, then we have a -rw, then finally we are adding here R. That means this file contains read and write mode. So both parts are executed simultaneously. That's why we write in here RW then -rw. So it is a general way through which you can display some permissions. What are the different type permissions are added in our Unix system. Next we are learning here what are the different way of representation of symbolic mode. Here in the absolute mode you change the permissions for all 3 owners. If a user want to put some permissions for 3 type of owners we have generally. So what are the different types of owners, like here U means the user or owner, G means the group, and O means other, and A means all type of owners are getting the permission to access it. But here in the symbolic mode you can modify the permissions of a specific owner. That means you never try to change all type of permissions in this file or Unix system. In that moment it makes use of mathematical symbols to modify the Unix file permissions. So that we are generally using some mathematical symbols. According to that symbols we can generally manipulate or maintain our Unix file systems or directory management systems. Here we have 3 type of symbols, like your plus, then minus, then equal to symbol. Then what are the real use of that plus? That means we have 4 type of users, and that type of users must be used 3 type of ownership symbols like plus, minus, then equal to. Then what are the real use of that plus symbol? Here this plus symbol is used as to add a permission to a file or directory. If a user want to add any type of permissions to a specific type of file or directory, in that moment we must to put like plus symbol in it. If a user want to put like minus, in that moment it means that it needs to remove any type of permissions which are added in our Unix system. So that we must put like minus symbol. If a user want to put like equal to symbol, in that moment we need to set the permission and overrides the permissions set earlier. So it is a general way through which you can be getting some information about our permissions, and that type of permissions must be set in our ownership of our Unix file or directory management system. So that here we know that U is act as a user or owner mode and G act as a grouping mode. If a user want to give permissions, and that permissions must be accessed through a specific type of groups, in that moment we must to mention like Z, and that G is denoted as a group, and we can add some group name, and this type of group names must be access this file system. Then we can add a O means other. In that other system means it is getting any other type of users they want to access that file or directory management system. In that moment we can put a O means the other sections. Similarly, we can put a means all means it can allow different type of users can access it, that is the public access specification. So it is a general way of movement through which you can be process it. So we will not be using permissions in numbers like 755 but characters like RWX. That means if a user want to put any type of permissions, we never put X as a number, we always need to put it as a character, RWS, or you can say X. That means R stands for the read mode, W stands for the write mode, and X stands for execute mode. So it is a general way of movement through which you can getting the different type of permissions access through different types of users in our Unix system. So next we are going to discuss how to changing owners and groups in our Unix system. In that moment, we know that while creating an account on Unix, it assigns an owner ID and a group ID to each user. So in that moment, we must to specify some different type of techniques through which you can need to manipulate its permissions or the account setting pattern. So all the permissions mentioned above are also assigned based on the owner and the groups, so that if a user want to put some permissions to a specific type of sections or account types like owner ID or group ID, in that moment we can use this type of specifications in our Unix system. So two commands are available to change the owner and the group of files. What are the different type of changing modes, like what are the different type of command modes through which you can be change it? Then first known as a chmod, chmod. That means we need to using this command we can change the owner section. So here the chmod command stands for change owner, and it is used to change the owner of a file. If a user want to change the owner of a specific file, that means suppose I am going to access a file with a specific name and that name must need to be changed to another name. In that moment we must to use the help of a command like chmod. That chmod helps to change its owner from one section to another section. And we have another command like chgrp command. Through that chgrp command, that stands for change group command, and which is used to change the group of a file. If a user want to change the grouping of a specific type of file, in that moment we need to take the help of this chgroup command. And we know that chgroup command helps to process any type of user's account, and that account must be specified with different type of groups, and that different type of groups must be accessed in a specific order. So it is a general way of movement through which you can easily change the grouping in our Unix system. Next we are going to learn what are the different processes through which we can changing our ownership, but how to really implement in our Unix system. So here we know that the chmod command changes the ownership of a file. If a user want to change the ownership of a file to another owner, in that moment we can take the help of a command chmod. That command must be learned in the previous slide. So the basic syntax of this command, like we must to put like your $sign, that $sign act as a Unix prompt. In that moment we can type a command like chmod. The chmod command helps to changing the ownership, and then we can type the user, and here we can write the file list. What are the different type of list we are adding here? So the value of the user can be either the name of a user on the system or the user ID of a user on the system. So that the following example will help you to understand the concept. So in that moment, whenever the Unix system is opened, we are getting a $prompt. $prompt means it is known as a Unix prompt. In that Unix prompt, we must have a command like chmod. That chmod command helps to change the ownership. Then we can type in here, that is known as the user, which type of user want to access it, and in that moment we can adding that user type known as a amrod. And here amrod is known as a specific type of user ownership. They can access like a specific type of file list named as a test file. Then we can press an enter. Whenever user can getting successful response, in that moment we are never getting any type of warning or error message, then we can simply getting the prompt in our Unix system. That means we can knowing that this command is successfully executed, so that if a user want to changes the owner of the given file to the user, that like known as the amrod, in that moment we can take the help of this chmod command. So we have a note in that note section here. The super user or root has the unrestricted capability to change the ownership of any file, but the normal users can change the ownership of only those files that they own. So it is a general way of movement through which you can be process it for the future response or future activity. So it is a general way of movement through which you can be process it. Now we can discuss already what are the different ways through which you can be manage our account in our Unix system through changing a ownership of single file to any other file, as well as whenever user want to change the ownership from the grouping section to another grouping section, in that moment we can take the help of chgrp. Then if a user want to change a single file ownership to another ownership, in that moment we can take a command like chmod command. Now we can focus on a slide. So in this slide we are getting a response already. So in this section already we have defined how to put our command like chmod command. Through that chmod command we can change the ownership of a specific type of file which is already processed in our Unix system. Next we are going to learn what are the different processes through which you can change the group ownership. In that moment we can put the chgrp, means change grouping ownership, and that command changes the group ownership of a file. So that the syntax must be explained here. We must use as a dollar prompt, and the dollar prompt known as a Unix prompt. Then we can type a command like chgrp command. That chgrp command helps to changing the grouping ownership. Then we can type a specific type of group. Those type of groups can access this type of file list. File list means we can adding a file list name. So here the value of group can be the name of a group on the system or the group ID. Here we have a group ID name as a GID. GID means a group ID. We must put like a group ID of a group on the system. We have a specific type of examples which are already explained in this slide. We can put here chgrp, which act as a one command. Through that command we can changing the grouping ownership in our Unix system. Then we have a special type of groups in our Unix system. We can typing here special. Then we can type a specific type of file list named as a test file. So this test file is act as a file list name, and that file list must be accessed through a specific type of group. Those are belongs to this special group. So in this way we can process it and getting a specific type of response in our Unix system. Next we need to process it like it changes the group of a given file to a special group. If a user want to change its group type to another group, that means a special group, in that moment we can process it. So it is a general way movement through which we can be process our section. Last but not least, here we have another section known as a SUID and sshd file permission technique. Here often when a command is executed, it will have to be executed with special privileges in order to accomplish its tasks. So we have a getting an example, but how to use this SUID and sshd means user ID and group ID. So it must be put like that. When you change your password with psswd is a password command, your new password is stored in the file system which is displayed in this section here. As a regular user, you don't have read or write access to this file for the security reasons, but when you change your password, then you need to process it in a specific order. So that if a user want to change its mode like read mode to another write mode, in that moment we can take the help of like SUID and sshd part. So this means the password program has to give you additional permission, so you can write to file or etc, and through this section we can getting more information about how to process and how to getting some chances to change the sgid then SUID parts. So that in this section we already discussed what are the different ways through which you can be process some user section part. in that user section part we are adding lots of permissions in their sections. That may be your no permission mode, then write mode, read mode, execute mode, whatever, or you can say write or read mode. So it is a general paths through which you can make our Unix system, and that Unix system more secure and the authenticated way to access different type files and directories. Okay, finally, thank you, have a nice day.